heard it mentioned a few times. Skills shortage. Haya just referenced it quite profoundly in her closing comment there regarding the Arab youth. We're looking at cultivating talent now as the key theme of this final session. How can organizations incorporate human capital to execute environmental commitments? Let's welcome to the virtual stage roundtable Dr. Steve Griffiths, Senior Vice President, Research and Development at Khalifa University, Vijay Bains, Group Head of Environment, Social and Governance, that's ESG, of course, and Chief Sustainability Officer at Emirates NBD Bank, Asma Rubia, MENA Regional Manager at UN Foundation and SDG 7 Youth Constituency, and Regional Manager at Girl Up. Asma, welcome. And of course, we welcome back to the virtual stage our overall roundtable host, Sharif Tawfiq, CSO, Middle East and Africa of Microsoft. Please, everybody, turn on your cameras and microphones for this final session. Thank you. I'm going to, as we have done throughout the session, and perhaps brief comments on this occasion from our Microsoft host. Of course, Sharif gave us a very profound introduction earlier on the larger picture. But on this particular topic, Sharif, we welcome your opening thoughts. Cultivating talent. How can organizations incorporate human capital to execute environmental commitments?
Thank you, Sean, again, and thank you, distinguished guests, for joining today. As you mentioned, Sean, the skill shortage in sustainability and overall is a major challenge current job markets are facing globally. We heard also in the previous panels discussions around opportunities and challenges when it comes to talent, skills, unemployment, bridging the gap between academic institutions and industry. At the same time, we see more and more companies are creating and hiring into the role of chief sustainability officer or sustainability directors, and those leaders are busy recruiting into their own teams. Actually, the gap between sustainability workforce and the needs and the number of qualified people is growing more and more. Green jobs grew at an annual rate of 8% over the last 6 years, and we expect that this growth rate may double or even triple in the coming years, while the talent pool only grew around 6%. Nearly 20% of the region that we're living in the Middle East and North Africa are between the ages of 15 and 24. And by 2030, 40% of the world's youth will be living in Africa. Therefore, there is a large opportunity for us to harvest youth development in the region, as well as prepare this future generation for the climate leadership. In this context, upskilling, reskilling, and preparing future professionals to acquire new green skills have been a priority of action of so many companies, including Microsoft. Microsoft, we launched the Middle East and Africa Sustainability School to democratize the knowledge towards sustainability. We run regular boot camps for our partners and suppliers to pick up the skills required. We partner with NGOs like UNESCO to develop teachers and students' curriculum. We run hackathons and competitions for universities and students and startups on climate tech. And we are open to partner with like-minded organizations. Glad to be hosting for sure this podcast and how organizations can leverage this human capital to execute on the environmental commitments with our esteemed guest. Over to you, my friend Sean, to kick off this podcast.
Shukran, Sharif. It seems appropriate to kick off with Asma Rabia, MENA Regional Manager at UN Foundation and SDG 7 Youth Constituency and Regional Manager at Girl Up. Asma, your opening thoughts on this, how big a challenge, how important is it for you to achieve your objectives within the context of the organizations you work with?
Thank you, Sean, for the invitation. Just to correct a small thing.
Please.
So Girl Up is an initiative as part of the UN Foundation. So that's the initiative I work with.
Okay.
So I'm a regional manager for Girl Up, which is within the UN Foundation. From my experience also as a young person and also coming from the Arab region, I noticed that there has been recently a strong emphasis on certifications, even within organizations, and how they can encourage the younger generations and incentivize them. For example, they would ask you what kind of like additional skills you want to acquire, what kind of like certifications you want to have, what kind of like courses you want to apply for, and the organization would pay for you. And I know this is the case with different organizations. For me, for example, I'm interested in sustainability and climate change, and especially energy. So I always exhibit my interest to always have like courses or be part of initiatives that boost my knowledge and understanding about sustainability and energy. Because education, of course, it is really crucial, but sometimes we don't really get the chance to study what we are really passionate about. Sometimes we don't find those fields available. So certifications now and online courses are becoming very important, especially for the younger generations, to boost their skills. And since we're also talking about upskilling, to know about new skills that are crucial for the contemporary issues and climate issues that we're facing, whether it's related to sustainability or also the energy, the environment, and corporate social responsibility, and also the environmental protection in general. So it is really important these days for organizations to focus on incentivizing the youth who join their organizations through offering them a very compelling employment package when they join, in terms of training, certifications, online courses, for them to be always up to date and know about the trends, especially the trends related to climate and sustainability.
Asma, just to follow up on that, I mean, as where you started your conversation, the girl part, if you could just introduce us a little bit to, obviously that has a focus on female. How does that intersect into this conversation?
Sure. So my work with Girl Up is on girls' leadership development, because girl age it's a very crucial age, and girls and women are underrepresented in STEM fields, in science, technology, mathematics, and engineering, and of course in sustainability and energy careers. So what we do is to encourage them to know about STEM fields, and also to pursue education in these fields by connecting them to inspire females. For me, of course, the focus is on the MENA region, always connecting the girls with inspiring females in the region, and having boot camps online or in person or hybrid. And we had two for the MENA region, one on renewable energy and one on sustainability, architecture, and urban planning. And this is a great chance for girls from a very young age, like ages 13 to 18, to know about these crucial topics, and to have like the interest from a young age to pursue education and then careers in this field, because that's really important for girls to be empowered at an early stage, especially with climate change and sustainability issues, and for them to afterwards be empowered to become energy engineers or sustainability practitioners in general.
Well, I think that's certainly having an impact here in the UAE, and very relevant to our next speaker, where I believe 70% of undergraduates in the UAE are women, and inevitably feeding into the STEM space. But Dr. Steve Griffiths, Senior Vice President, Research and Development at Khalifa University, of course, at your end of this upskilling train, you're needing the PhD, the full Monty, if you like, of the capability to generate new knowledge, which is ultimately what research and development is. Your thoughts on this cultivating talent from a regional perspective in order that we can achieve some of our sustainability goals?
Sure. And once again, as I always do when I start my discussions, thank you, Sean, for inviting me to these events. Always a pleasure to participate. So I think when I comment on the MENA region, what I'll say is largely going to be relevant globally. So it's when we talk about sustainability, there will be a regional flavor to the way we tackle it, but many of the things we have to do from the university side are going to be having a global relevance. When I think about what we are doing and how universities can help support the industries that are transitioning now and going through an energy transition, there's three areas where the paradigm, which has historically been in place about how you train students, how you enable the workforce is changing. One is the skill sets required need a sustainability focus to them. And so when I say sustainability, it's hard today to be involved with a company into which you're hired and not know what is this discussion on climate change, not know what are the key components of climate change, believe in climate change and what are the key contributors, what are the greenhouse gases, really the fundamentals, right? I mean, it's hard to consider yourself an employee of an organization that's moving in the right direction for sustainability without knowing that. In the same vein, most of the industrial jobs today require some knowledge of what are the more technical components of sustainability. When I talk about technical, at one point, I didn't know, and I'm sure most don't know what a scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emission is. How do you account for carbon? If I'm in a particular operational job as an engineer or a PhD, how do I think about mitigating the emissions impact across the full life cycle and do a life cycle assessment? So all those things at one point would have been interesting topics for research in themselves, but now they're fundamental knowledge that you have to think about. The second skill set, which is very important and I'm finding to be more and more relevant at KU, and I'm sure it's going to be the same case globally at all universities, is getting that package of skills together for transformation. When I say transformation, it's the broad skill set, which is not on any one topic, but is broadly applicable. And so systems thinking. You don't want to be an electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, chemical engineer in your own silo and try and tackle sustainability. You need to consider holistic systems. And that relates back to things I was saying about understanding life cycle assessments, integrated thinking about where emissions come from, impacts on the climate change issue we face. So systems thinking is critical. And as to be a systems thinker, I think you have to be an analytical and critical thinker. So as Asma said, in the ongoing career, there'll be certifications and what have you in deep areas that you want to get involved in, but you're not going to do well in those certifications unless you can think analytically and critically. And so at the university, we need to create that as platform capability. The third area is the enabling set of skills. And so we don't need to get into all the things that are digital today because the host is Microsoft. And I can't open up a single article without seeing Chat GPT in there somewhere. It used to be robots. Now it's about little chatbots. But nonetheless, you got to be digitally savvy if you're going to be able to use the tools for sustainability. If you don't know how to organize data, if you don't know how to analyze data, if you don't know how to talk to people that work with data, it's really, really hard to be in the industry today. So you need that platform skill set, and you need the operational skill set to do your job. So we may talk later about internships and apprenticeships, but you don't just want to be the jack of all trades around these things I talked about. If you want to work for a company, you then got to take all this into the context of the company. And so that becomes increasingly important for employability. So on our side, whether it's the research people, the academic people, or what have you, the job is getting a little bit tricky, but I enjoy it. So I carry on.
Yeah, that's no short list of challenge what the new superhuman needs to look like. But we have one superhuman with us, I think, or no, some version thereof. VJ Baines, Chief Sustainability Officer and Group Head of Environmental, Social and Governance, ESG at Emirates MBD Bank. I just want to make a note that, which is I think relevant in the context of noting it, that VJ is the first ever Group Head of ESG at Emirates MBD and now is the first ever CSO of Emirates MBD, and as a case in point as to why the forum of MIA Forum of Sustainability Leaders was created, because of the emergence of this situation. But VJ, you have a lot of experience in building and implementing ESG strategies and teams. Many don't, even though this is a beginning, as I said, inaugural position within the Emirates MBD, but you have a long resume that reflects you've done a lot of this work in many places. Your thoughts on where that intersects, the implementation of ESG strategies and the talent, the cultivating or the shortage of talent, or where those two meet. Where are we at this point? Where do we need to get to?
Thanks so much, Sean, for that warm introduction, and Sharif again for hosting the session. And it's been a fascinating listening into all the discussions as well. It's been really, really riveting. As you mentioned, I've been in sustainability for 21 years, and I was presenting to our graduates, and they took a sharp intake of breath, and they thought, they kind of said, VJ, I think ESG is for young people. And I was like, oh, goodness, makes me feel very, very old. But I think sustainability has been here in some form or another for many, many years. And, you know,
Well, I
15,
always
20 years
think of
ago.
our grandparents. You know, my grandmother had her own domestic farm. She was a
Yeah,
teacher, but she grew everything she required in her own garden, raised her own chicken, and all of that sort of basic stuff. So we're the generation that went out of sustainability. It was there before
I
us.
think so.
Hopefully, it comes back with Asma and her peer group. But sorry to interrupt you, Vijay. I just thought
No,
of that.
most definitely. And I think sustainability's been there in some form or another with all of us. And Sharif, I know when you and I spoke as well, there's so many talking points in our personal lives where we reflect sustainability. And the exciting element of my role is that sustainability is now in the boardroom. It is now in the boardroom. It is now at exco level. It is now at the chairman level, especially with a year of sustainability in COP28 as well. It seems absolutely core to the way in which the bank operates. And for us, if I talk about it, you know, it's a free focus strategy. So one, sustainable finance opportunities are growing as well as transition finance opportunities. The writing is on the wall for certain industries as well, and we want to help with those transition financing as well. But the second one is we want to walk the walk and talk the talk. And, you know, it has to be part of our DNA. And for us as a bank, bankers, I'm in the safe space here, we're known to be very conservative. So, you know, when we talk about opportunities as well, we want to educate both ourselves as well as the market as well. And it's really important. I think, Steve, you had a great point around scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. We're looking to educate bankers on acronyms, on the ESG alphabet soup, but also educate and upskill the market as well. And for us, that is really, really important. And taking part in forums like this are really, really important. Now, for bankers, we're not used to kind of sharing data and sharing information. It is definitely a paradigm shift in the way we're thinking, but we are already seeing those benefits. We're already working with other financial services institutes and other institutes on what we're seeing in terms of trends from Europe, from North America, what investments need to happen from central governments as well, and also what is appropriate for the UAE and our own glide path as well, as we will not follow the same paths as Europe and North America as well. Our cost of oil extraction is different, our usage is different as well, and our carbon intensity is different. But coming back, Sean, to your question, in that training and upskilling for us is really part of the DNA. It's, you know, we have had a number of presentations where training and knowledge sharing, it's now built into everyone's job role within EBD. So all 17,000 staff, from the retail bankers to the investment bankers to the board, even to our charters as well.
I mean, I'll just jump in on that point, Vijay. You mentioned it again, the sustainability is now in the boardroom. When you think about that upskilling, how, you know, is it more important, is as important that you go up as well? I mean, the board is critical in order for the integration downward. Where do those two, how do you navigate them in your role?
It's a brilliant question. So for us, yeah, for me, it is definitely important that the boardroom takes ownership and it sponsors at the senior level, because it acts as a fantastic halo effect for everyone else then within the group or within the organization as well. We've also then built it into the KPIs for this year as well, so that people know that you must have knowledge of sustainability, and this is here to stay as well. There is sometimes a little bit the feeling of, is ESG or sustainability corporate social responsibility? And for me, they are separate disciplines in themselves as well. CSR has evolved into ESG, but, you know, if I have a look at ESG regulations like TCFD or ISSB or climate risk modeling, that, you know, I'm sure if I give you a plug, you know, Microsoft do very, very well, and net zero tracking, that is a different discipline as well. But it is important that also people own this as well. So we had started about 20 or so ESG initiatives across the bank, but as we've reached out to people to talk about upskilling and training, we found 40 other initiatives which were already running as well. So we've shone a light on what people are doing in terms of recycling, water reuse, commuting, as well as digitalization as well.
Asma, I'd like to just bring you in on that. I mean, we talked there with Vijay about a corporate environment. You've led and designed implementation of similar capacity building for policymakers and public sector reform. does the same thing apply there? Is it in order for that sustainability strategy to bed in, obviously critical in companies, but even you would say more critical in the public sector?
Sure. So since like the knowledge is always have to be up to date, similar to the issues. So what we do like each year, in the first job that I had in Tunisia after graduating, it was like corporate because my academic background is business administration. So each year we ask our clients what kind of like issues they're facing, what kind of gaps they have in terms of knowledge or skills, and we adapt our curriculum and programming depending on that. So we first like make our research online on what trends exist and how we can manage like the best our training programs, what key elements should be there, also like in terms of trainers who would be the best fit, and we sit with the trainers and ask them what kind of like new tools they're using, what kind of trends they're following, because we always have to give the up to date knowledge for the client. So yeah, it was like a great journey also in the corporate sector, since now I'm more in the nonprofit, but same for the like whether it's nonprofit or for profit, you always have to follow the trends and always seek how you can first improve your own knowledge and skills, and of course the client or the target audience that you're serving to always provide up to date information.
You,
So for
you
us,
mentioned you mentioned there the earlier comment that there's a strong emphasis or need on certification. Is that a critical part of the tool of this upskilling, cultivating talent? I mean,
yeah, this is Yeah, so this is from my experience, even with my friends. Sometimes I would see them like at certain roles, and then when I ask about their academic background, doesn't really match. So I say, how did you land in this job? For example, especially these days, like artificial intelligence and data analytics. So they would tell me that it's not about their education, but they had certifications in these areas, and that's how they got the jobs, or that's how they are now mastering these areas or these skills. So that's like now what I notice. It's more about certifications. Even when I open LinkedIn, I use LinkedIn a lot, and when I see people posting, I don't see them, for example, posting about their diploma. I see them like posting more about the certifications that they're having. Of course, as I say, like education is really crucial, but from what I started to notice, that there's a strong emphasis on certifications. And of course, like now there's collaboration between training centers and organizations and educational or like universities on how to offer certifications, especially the executive certifications. So it's more about like how it's a collaboration between different stakeholders to offer the best and up to date knowledge that fit the best for the target audience.
Steve, you mentioned there obviously the requirement for all of us to have a variety. I mean, Asma's mentioning certifications. You mentioned a lot of glossaries, basic foundational requirements that we all need just to operate and function in a corporate environment or in any professional environment. And then there's probably layering on top of that, depending on your specific path. But I wanted to get your thoughts on where that intersects in the academic environment. Would you say the same, that every student, I mean, you're sitting on top of the R&D space within the context of your university, which of course is very high-end academic expertise that moves in a particular way. But in order for you to maximize that space, is it now equally important that every student has a competency across this subject area in order for the high end to also function to the maximum?
It's a very, very good question. I think the short answer, the answer I will give you is yes. There are a few different capabilities, which I believe are platform capabilities, which really should be a common thread through every educational curriculum. One of them that we've talked about in many different contexts is digital skills, and I mentioned that today. So all the students should have a core understanding, core knowledge of how to become more savvy in the use of digital technologies, whether or not they're going to be the data scientist, they're going to be the data user or working with data scientists. That's one of them. But sustainability is less discussed, at least previously in our conversations, but nonetheless just as important. If you're going to work in the corporate environment today and you're going to be productive and someone that's promotable, certificates and training is great. You know, I spent many years at MIT and we have a great professional program there, educate people on all different things. But you want the students to come out of the universities with that knowledge as well, not just offer professional education programs. So I am a big advocate of a cross-cutting theme in the educational programs at any university where sustainability, digitalization, even now, you know, I'll talk more about geopolitical awareness. The big things that are going to impact the way in which you can interact in organizations should cut across all of the different courses, all the different programs. And I also think that universities should start to combine into more systemically developed colleges like colleges of computing, colleges of sustainability, colleges of design. It's not about being an electrical engineer, chemical engineer, whatever it may be. I'm a chemical, very proud. But it's about understanding how to put together everything with sustainability and these core capabilities as a common thread.
Vijay, perhaps you could pick up on that. I mean, from the point of view of industry, how do you think current educational programs need to evolve to be better aligned with your needs, industry needs? We had a recent global survey by Deloitte to youth population. 71% responded that they had to go outside formal education to acquire the skills for the jobs they wanted. What do you think, where from your perspective, what you're trying to implement internally? You said 17,000, I think, as colleagues at Emirates MBD. What are you looking more for educational programs to be better aligned with your needs?
So I think for us, we want people who can practically deliver these programs. So if someone is in risk, that they understand what climate risk, what sustainability risk is as well, and environmental risk. So we've got environmental risk models, for example, for natural hazards. Actually, we haven't kind of publicized that across the group. And obviously, with the well-known earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, that was already baked into our policies and procedures as well. So actually, part of it is knowledge sharing that we're looking at. So creating that learning kind of culture and that knowledge sharing culture that often is already in higher education institutes already. The second one is, I think there is sometimes a bit of a focus on, if I've got this certificate, then I can do this role. But Asma perfectly articulated where everything is evolving so rapidly. I always say ESG and sustainability evolves in dog years. So what was relevant a few months ago isn't relevant in a few months. So actually, we are really looking at shorter courses, even a few minutes long, where people can get their knowledge up. They can understand actually what the COP28 focus areas are as well. And we're supporting partners and working with partners to open up those kind of short videos from ourselves, from knowledge partners, including universities, but also looking to open them up to the network as well. Because again, we want to really open up the whole of the region to understand about sustainability. And the final one is really focusing on what our skills need to be in a few years as well. So where is this going to go? So if I have a look at climate risk models in Europe and North America, there's a huge amount of data. Now, we had a consultant in who presented us in the climate risk model, and actually it wasn't sufficient for us because it didn't have any data from the region. So actually now we're starting to reflect of, and Steve, it'll be brilliant to have a conversation offline here, you know, how can we build up a model that is sufficient for banks and entities and corporates in the region as well? And a lot of our now more mature kind of learning journey takers are now starting to think, actually, what we've got in place and what the best in class isn't really best in class. There's a real white space for us to move to. And that will create more opportunities and jobs for the youth as well as our colleagues.
Interesting. We're going to have to leave it there. We've come to the end of our 2 hours together in this very interesting round table with some amazing speakers. I want to give Sharif the opportunity as the host of this session, Cultivating Talent, but also the host of the whole round table, to sort of wrap up this session and wrap up the 2 hours.
Thank you, Sean. This was really, really insightful discussion. specifically in this final roundtable. We heard from Asma the need of special focus on girls' empowerment and the climate tech skilling. Asma also mentioned how people can have jobs that has nothing to do with their formal education, as opposed to the acquired certifications and the hunger to seek the best up-to-date knowledge. We heard from Dr. Steve that the skills required across all industries and arguably across all roles today would need a sustainability fundamental foundation. He mentioned the term platform capabilities. I love it, which should not only include digital skills, but also sustainability skills. By the way, Dr. Steve, one of the use cases we are working on for ChatGPT will be skilling and awareness on sustainability that is personalized per role, per persona, per industry. So ChatGPT will continue to be center stage in most of the discussions here. We heard from Vijay, the first ever CSO in Emirates MBD, how sustainability is becoming a boardroom discussion, which means it needs to turn to culture, which means awareness and skilling becomes part of the DNA of all bank 17,000 employees, as well as their KPIs, as well as the bank customers, hopefully. In conclusion, cultivating talent is a crucial aspect of any organizational success, especially when it comes to executing on environmental commitments, which should be a critical success factor to all organizations today in this day and age. It's remarkable that our region will be hosting 2 consecutive COPs in a row, COP27 and COP28. And I firmly believe that the Middle East and Africa will play a vital role in shaping the future of climate policies as well as sustainable transformation worldwide. Thank you, Sean, and thank you all distinguished guests, friends, and colleagues for attending today's event. I would also like to express my gratitude to Gulf Intelligence for organizing this insightful event, and we look forward for more similar events and forums in the future. Thank you very much.
Shukran, Sharif, and thank you to everybody. And in this context, wrapping up our session, to thank Dr. Steve Griffiths at Khalifa University, Vijay Bains at Emirates MBD, Asma Rubia at the Girl Up, a agency of the United Nations program. Really great and a great sort of bookend to the session with all of the incredible voices that we've had here today. And as I said earlier, we will capture the salient comments, editorialize it into a summary document for everybody to have as a takeaway and share maybe with the 17,000 if there's something useful at Emirates MBD or others within this sustainability leaders community. So we thank you for your time and wish you the best with the rest of your day. Thank you.